Okay, then let us begin with the word of prayer. Heavenly Father, you have sent your Spirit into this world. You work in this world. You do things for people, for us. Let us always look at all that we see through the eyes of faith, that we may see you're acting in the regular world, though other people don't see it. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen. Okay, it's the month of March in the year 28 AD. Okay, and we go to the book of John, 2nd chapter, and we'll start with the first. Through verse 5, please.
1 through 5?
1 through 5.
I can do that.
Thank you.
On the third day, there was a wedding at Cana of Galilee, and the mother of Jesus was there. Jesus and his disciples had also been invited to the wedding. When the wine gave out, the mother of Jesus said to him, "They have no wine." And Jesus said to her, "Woman, what concern is that to you and to me? My hour has not yet come." His mother said to the servants, "Do whatever he tells you."
Okay, come on. Try and explain that for me. Come on. I love this one.
Well,
that doesn't make any sense. Everybody's like they're not listening to each other.
Yeah. Clearly there was a insistence upon Mary's part, and
okay.
Jesus was clear that it wasn't time to start doing miracles, but when your mother asks.
You see, it's still confusing, even the way you say it. It's interesting that all she said was, they have no wine. What's the big deal? I don't understand the big... Someone said they have no wine. I said, okay, thank you. Appreciate that. I guess I won't send them back just another glass. I mean, it's just a statement.
Yeah. But in those days,
those days, there's some subtext here that we're not seeing. There's something, when she said that, there's something else being said. And that's what we don't know what it is yet. Okay? Then his response to whatever was not being said is, it's not a problem of mine. What are you talking about? It's not yet my time. What? Does it make sense to you? It sounds like kind of being impolite to each other, going, what is your problem? You see? And then when he's done saying, it's none of my business, she says, well, servants, whatever he tells you to do, go do it. Mm-hmm. We're missing all sorts of subtext here. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Clearly Mary knew what she wanted.
Apparently Mary knew that she was saying, excuse me, Jesus, they got a problem, fix it.
Yeah.
Okay. And clearly he said something like, well, not yet. Something else is happening here. And she says, he'll take care of it.
Yep.
So, it's kind of weird.
Has your wife never done that to you?
Done what to me?
Volunteered you to do something that you weren't particularly ready for?
No.
Okay.
I'm sure that never happened.
Because I've been married a long time.
It's usually isn't that within the first few years of marriage where they do that more often. And either spouse will do it. Mm-hmm. Okay, we don't just attack me and my woman.
No,
okay. Yeah, exactly. So, what could be said? What is Mary saying when she knows they're out of wine? That's what it seems to say. The wine ran out. They have no wine. What is she saying?
Yeah, fix it.
Fix it.
But she didn't say...
We need wine.
We need wine.
She didn't say go buy some. She said they're out of wine.
Right.
Yeah.
Which means I want you to be aware of that and take care of it. Well, as the mature male of her household, because there is no Joseph, she's also maybe saying, I would like you to help solve this problem.
What do we do?
What can we do? And then skipping whatever he says, the response is, whatever he tells you to do, servants, just do it. He'll help. Maybe he'll go out and arrange to have another jar or two of wine brought in, jar being fairly tall, or sacks or bags, or maybe I don't know. But whatever he tells you to do, do it. So that's Mary. Jesus is a whole nother ball game because of what he says and what he later does. Okay, we'll get into that. Okay, any questions, thoughts, or comments on that so far? Okay, then I want to show you where Cana is located again. Okay, here is Nazareth down here. Sepphoris, that's the big Greek city here. And then way up here above that is Cana. So it's still a fair. Hi,
look at that.
Welcome.
Oh my goodness.
Thank you for helping.
Come on in, Marlene.
Thank you.
I haven't seen you for a long time. It's so good to see you.
It's good to see you again.
Oh.
So to be, I meant to be here earlier, but you can't stay home and do nothing for all these.
Only so long. Yes.
Yeah,
Sitting around doing nothing for that gets really tiresome. Would you get her? Let's put her there in the chair, and then you can sit there. That way she's close
She
by.
can get up these steps.
Oh, then let's put one right here in front.
I want to go in and try
Yeah.
and-
Right there.
Okay, good.
All right, Marley, you can get up and sit right there.
You get that one there?
I came to audit.
Okay, good.
and I hope
Do I have your permission slip from the principal?
I'm the principal too.
Oh, well, in that case, you have permission.
There you go.
Oh, it's so good to see you, Marlene. Oh, bless your heart.
Perfect.
She's our walker. She's just amazing.
Yeah, I've seen her walking all through town.
And that and all this COVID stuff.
Yes.
So I drive, I just don't walk.
I know, it's been so hard on that.
Okay.
So good to see you though. Oh,
And so you're there, huh?
Yep.
Thank you.
All right. Here's where we are. We're going to catch up again. Jesus has got his first couple of disciples, and he's back up in the Galilee area. And he's been invited, his mother and him were invited up to a wedding just north of Nazareth up at Cana. And so he's gone to the wedding. And we're now starting to find out what was this conversation between Mary, his mom, and him, where she says, gee, they don't have any wine. And he says, what's that got to do with me, woman? And she says to the servants, whoever tells you to do it. And that's where we are. Okay?
So how far is Cana from Nazareth?
Okay, let's find that out.
More or less.
More or less. Well, if I look down in this lower right-hand corner, I find that that first mark there is 5 miles. So I'm going to walk that up straight. 5 miles. 10 miles.
Okay. Good walk anyway.
It's a nice walk. Yeah. Okay. So let's find out what's happening here and try to figure out some of this conversation. All right, it is the spring of the year 28 AD. A wedding was scheduled in Cana. Now this is Cana today. I hope the picture isn't too dark. Yeah, this is the town of Cana today.
So even today it's not.
Date from the wedding that was planned for that day?
At the top, say again?
28 AD, you said? Did they get the date from the
Yeah.
wedding plan?
Yeah, they sent out a little notice on it saying when it would be. That's a joke, okay? We know when Jesus started his ministry approximately. And so this is one of the first things he does. So it's in 28 AD, and he goes to what was a village at the time, just a little
I was going
village.
to say, even as we look at it now, it's not very big today.
It's hard to call it a town,
Yeah.
okay? But it was a village then, okay? And Mary, the mother of Jesus, was invited. Okay? Now, tell me about Mary at this time. It's the year 30, okay, or 28. Jesus is older, what year did he go back? Oh gosh, let's go check. Hold on a second. Let's go back to when, see, there's his first disciples, there's the temptation. That's in 27. Jesus is baptized in the year 27. Okay. John begins his ministry. Jesus in the temple. Childhood of Jesus. Home. Jesus was born around 5 BC. Okay? That's what I wanted you to remember. 5 BC. What?
BC mean before Christ?
Before Christ. That's what we're using now. So if he was born 5 BC and it's now 28 AD, what do we have for age for Jesus? How old is Jesus?
He's young, he's 23.
32.
32. You're a mathematician, girl.
What?
Yes, he's easily
He
in
was
his
in
30s
5
because
to 28.
you have the 28 plus the 5.
5 comes before the 0 and...
Right.
You said he was born in 5.
BC.
Oh, BC, yeah.
Yeah, got it. So
Yep.
she nailed
Okay,
that.
good.
So he's about 32. How old is his mother?
Who knows?
young.
She was young.
She was a young teen, 13 or 14 maybe.
Yeah.
Okay, how old is she then, approximately? If he is 32, how old is she, approximately?
Close to 50.
Thank you.
How old?
This is 32 plus, say 30, 45, something in that range.
Because how old was she when Jesus was?
When Jesus was born, she was probably 13 or 14.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah,
That
she was a
was-
young, they all were that way.
That's because that's what the culture was in those days.
Right.
Very young.
We didn't do that these days.
Okay.
But you add that to the 28 that he is now, and you have something in the 28, 38, 42, 45 maybe, let's say. That makes her a mature woman. This is a woman who's had a household, she's raised her children. She's a respected now woman of her culture, isn't she, in her town?
But-
don't think of her as young now.
But she's still a widow, probably living off what Jesus earns,
Correct. Jesus is supporting her.
or him and his brothers.
And his brothers
Yeah.
as well. And his sisters may be married. I don't know that. Probably they would be. But his brothers and sisters, they're all going to be taking care of her. But she is a mature woman who has been invited to a wedding. Why was she in? What is she going to do when she goes to a wedding? If you were invited to go to a wedding, what would you do?
I go.
Yes, and what else would you do in a small town?
Well, you take making arrangements for your children.
Yeah, and you would bring stuff, wouldn't you? Or you would help. Think of coming down to the church meeting, a meal down here. You bring dishes and you help in the kitchen. And so that's what you have to think of Mary now. Mary is a mature woman starting to work toward old age. Because in those days, 60 is very old. Okay, so she's up there now. Okay, and she's been invited to a wedding. She's going to help out. Okay, so Nathanael secured an invitation for Jesus and Philip. Remember, Nathanael and Philip were the first two disciples. Nathanael lived here in Cana, this little village. And since Mary has been invited to the wedding, he makes sure that Jesus and the other disciple that's there, Philip, are both also to come with her. They can come to the wedding. Does this make sense? Okay, good. Any questions so far? Remember, there's still only two disciples, Philip and Nathanael. So Jesus and Philip have been now invited by Nathanael to come to the wedding. Okay? The celebration would last how many days? Days.
Oh,
Yeah, modern Africa, about a week.
7 days is still the correct answer. Oh yeah, you have a 7-day party. That's the wedding feast. Oh yeah, party time. And think of how much wine you could go through in 7 days with a bunch of people, especially rural people who really know how to wet their whistle.
Well,
Okay?
somebody else is paying for the wine, you may as well drink up.
Drink it now, yeah. So you have now a 7 days of celebration. It comes and goes. It gets stronger and weaker. It's not so busy in the morning when everybody's still trying to sleep, but it gets busy every evening, in the afternoon, evening. So because other people are working, then they have to come back after work, and so the celebration goes on for 7 days. And guess who gets to pay for it? The father of the bride, of course. Correct? What?
In
Africa?
modern Africa today, the dowry is paid by the
groom.
parents of the groom.
The groom, my apologies. You're right. I've forgotten they've done that still. So somebody is going to pay for all this wine and the little sandwiches, the food. Someone has to pay for all this. And you have to have all, so you stock up from the local stuff right away. You get, hey, Joe, give me some 5 gallons of wine, and Marilyn, give me this, and Joanne, give me that, and so you arrange the feast that goes with the wedding, and the party that continues on. Any questions so far? Comments or thoughts? Okay. New guests could arrive at any time. You didn't have to be there the whole 7 days camped out sleeping. You came and went as you were able.
Well, they didn't have clocks either. Yep. Yeah.
You're right. They didn't have watches and timepieces or their iPhones or whatever they call them now. They didn't have any of that stuff.
In modern Africa, if you're in the villages,
Yeah.
what time shall we do this or that? Figure about 2 hours after they said.
Really?
Oh yeah. And they have timepieces today because they all have cell phones.
Sure.
But in the villages, things happen on a different pace.
Oh, a couple hours after sunrise, before the sun goes down, keep it, and that's true too. Anytime during these 7 days, new people could arrive. They could have people coming in from villages to the south or from other areas. So just be aware, it's kind of open-ended 7-day party. Okay? There would be food, wine, music, and guests in abundance. You're all invited. The whole town, village would be invited, Cana. Everybody would know about it, except that horrible person over there we don't like. Come on, little towns, we've hated each other for seven generations, they're not invited. I hate to think that, but it's true. Okay, Mary, a mature woman in her late 40s, probably, or early 50s, was helping with the preparations, because that's what women did at the time. Okay? Cooking, serving, cleaning. Remember, this is 7 days. And she goes there, maybe not all 7 days, but enough of them to help with this. Okay? In addition, she would be very involved in what did women do when they do all this stuff at a church meal?
A lot of yakking.
Yeah, yakking, socializing. Come on. You think of all the times you got there as, oh, this recipe, and we got that thing, I tried cleaning with this, and right? And that's the image of that. Nowadays, oh yeah, man, I was out there trying to cut the line, and that's the men's side, you say, Socializing, finding out what's going on, talking about those damnable Romans, and the taxes, and the horrors of those, of what we've heard happen in a nearby village, and that Sepphoris, all those Greeks, oh God, they're idols, yeah, horrors. Just like we would talk today. We'd get together and talk about how this government agency is kind of irritating us, or this social thing is a bother, or we can't do this because we can't afford them anymore, or they've changed this on us and we don't like that because we don't like change. Socializing. And that's nice. So there's Mary, in with the other women at her time, in her place, socializing, doing stuff together. It would be like you're quilting, you just talk. That sound good? Yeah. Back when you were half your age, you'd have more energy to work with, and that would be more fun, right? Okay.
Did they really have more energy, or did they age faster also, since they die faster?
Yes, in many ways. They age, if they got to 55 or 60, they were considered old. Okay? Hit 70, you are now the ancient one.
So the first time we went to Africa, the average life expectancy in the village that we went to was 32 years.
Oh, my word.
But you have to realize a lot of that is because of infant mortality.
That's right.
They lost so many babies. There were old people, but there were few.
Yeah.
And they don't have what you would consider proper medicine.
Healthcare,
Yeah.
cleansing
So
facilities.
things that you
Proper
would
diet.
recover from because somebody gave you some antibiotics, they don't recover from.
Or your
Because
body,
They get in there too late.
or your
whatever.
body is not as healthy because it doesn't. Your body eats well. Their
Right.
bodies have problems getting the right balance of foods.
Right.
So their immune system is down. And so all these factors, plus in those days, you have people being killed at random by a soldier maybe, or by a bandit, or something like that, or a raid on your place. You have all of these factors coming in that, yes, people did live old, but the lifespan wasn't really expected.
But that's also a reason that even today they have children very young and they have a lot of them.
A lot of them.
Yep.
That's right. You better. Otherwise, you're not going to be taken care of when you're old. It's your kids, in those days especially. There was no Social Security. There was no benefit thing. You had to depend on your children to care for you. And if something happened to them, you were without support. And then you had to start begging. And you became a burden on somebody else.
Mhm.
We'll run into poor people like this. Jesus ran into them periodically. We'll run into them too later. Any other questions? Any other thoughts about this fun time for Mary? Yes?
In the Bible, they're always pictured as young women.
Yes.
There's never an old woman in the Bible, really.
Yes, women, well, that's because our culture idealizes the young. Instead of the mature, knowledgeable, wisdom-filled person, they think of the youth and the energy.
But they probably were young. I mean, they were, because 50 is not like 80 at all. So they were young. 50 is a young age.
50 is young to us, but if it's more like 80 to them, or 70, when they were 18, they were already married, they already had 2 or 3 children. At 18, okay? When they were 30, they were already middle-aged. And their
And
body...
they probably had grandchildren.
Right, and the toll on their bodies was high. So they looked, I think, probably older than we would look at someone today at being 30. A granddaughter, for example. She would look much older by another maybe 10 years. Poor diet, hard work, a lot of sun, maybe scars from something. It's hard. So I try to bring the age down to something that's more familiar whenever I can.
But that's why I was thinking the Bible depicted them well when you look at the pictures of them, that they are basically
Yes.
not old
But
people.
those are artist
That is-
renditions.
You are correct we usually think of them as being young because they're really young here where they said, and by our standard they sure look good, but by their standards they already look older than they are.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they don't look like they're
No.
teenagers any longer.
Yeah. Okay, very good. All right, here we go then. Let's keep good. On the 4th or 5th day of the party, remember? 7 days long. On the 4th or 5th day, Jesus arrives with Philip. He wasn't there for the whole thing, I don't think. But we know he was there on about the 4th or 5th day. And they joined the celebration. Okay. For a while, Jesus circulated, and at some point he greeted his mother. Okay? That doesn't mean he traveled with her. She was doing her thing. He might have, I don't know. But at some point, he came into contact with her. While they were talking, Mary mentioned that apparently the host was running low on wine. I say it's a faux pas. It's a mistake by the host to run out of wine. That's not good.
Or it could also be that the host bought all the wine they could find and bad grape year. Who knows?
Could be. One way or another.
We don't know.
People are not going to be happy with that. They got
Right.
2 more days of celebration and hello, where's our wine?
Yeah.
So I call it a faux pas because I want to slip those words in there because that's fun to say, faux pas. So there's an oops. There's something has fallen short here. And so she mentions that they're either running out or are now out of wine. Okay? Certainly they don't have enough to get through the party. Okay? So Jesus, you can't have any more. Okay. Then I will say she goes like this. Someone ought to do something about it. Now there's a mother. Someone ought to do something about it. Looking directly at her son. Right? Looking expectantly at Jesus. Someone ought to do something about it. You know how that expression is. It's the one that our spouses often use. Or when we use them on our children. Someone ought to do something about it. Right? So she looks at him and she's saying, someone ought to do something. Okay? The situation, now careful, now listen to what I'm saying. I'm interpreting it now. The situation is just like Israel. But it is not yet time for me to act, was Jesus' initial response. Okay, Jesus is taking the situation out of Cana and talking about all of Israel now. Relax, I'm going to go back over it. Okay? And he's saying it's not so much of the problem here, we're talking about being out of wine. Israel is out of wine. Huh? Spiritually, Israel is out of wine. Israel is without the stimulation of God in its nature. It's running out of energy. It's running out of enthusiasm. Daringness. Israel is becoming stodgy. Is that the right word? Stodgy?
I don't know, but clearly they need help.
Something is wrong. And so he's saying, we have to do something for Israel, that's what he's saying. But it's not yet my time. That won't be for 3 years yet. When he goes to Jerusalem and is crucified. Okay? When he goes there. That's what he's called to do. Okay? Right now he says, I can't do anything about it right now. He says, it's not time for me to act yet to save Israel. He shifted it. You see it? He went from Mary's looking at the situation here in Cana, and he's saying the bigger picture is this. And Jesus does this all the time. People come up and say, we don't have enough bread. He says, the bread of the Pharisees. And they go, what? Because they don't understand that he's gone from the physical level to the spiritual level. That's what he did in his response. That's why it made no sense to us. God, what does that have to do with me? Huh? Because in his ministry that he now knows of, because he's been through the temptation, he's been told that he's the Son of God. He knows he's the Messiah. So now it's a matter of going, what do I do with my ministry? And it's not yet time. It's not time. Okay? That sort of makes sense to you. Okay? So, remember, he just changed levels from earthly Cana to heavenly Israel. And that's why his response makes no sense to us.
So out of wine meant nothing to him.
Out of wine, here at Cana, meant nothing to him. It meant to him Look at all of Israel and how they've given up on the Lord, and they don't have enthusiasm for that. They have the Torah, but they don't have the enthusiasm of the Spirit anymore. And I can't do anything about that yet. It's not yet my time. And Mary must have been very confused by that. What? Whatever he said doesn't matter. Servants, whatever he says, do it. Okay? Do you see that now? A little bit? I don't ask you to remember it.
She's worried about today, and he's worried about...
She's worried about the wedding. He's worried about saving Israel and saving humanity and our salvation.
That's the way it should be.
That's the way it was. But at the time, it was probably confusing to poor Mary. Okay. Jesus, that was his initial response, changing the conversation to a spiritual level from Cana to Israel. But Mary knew that her son was a good man. He was a good boy. He's now a good man. He's been caring for us. He's been taking care of us all this time. He's a good man. Jesus was her eldest son, and she believed that Jesus would find a way to help in Cana. Therefore, after he had departed, Mary, still thinking on the physical level, Cana, told the household servants to expect some help from Jesus and to follow his directions. Mm-hmm. She's right here on the physical level. Let's make sure this meal goes off well, the party is nice. And he's gone here, up onto the level of the spirits. Okay? Poor Mary. Okay, it's not easy, by the way, being like this. Not easy at all.
Quit worrying about today and...
Yeah, and how fun and how easy is that?
Yeah.
That's hard. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's continue reading now with the Gospel of John. We'll go with 2:6 through... go through 2:8. 6 through 8.
Now there were 6 stone water pots set there for the Jewish custom of purification, containing 20 or 30 gallons each. Jesus said to them, "Fill the water pots with water," and they filled them up to the brim. And he said to them, "Draw some out now, and take it to the head waiter," and they took it to him. Okay, thank you. So, Jesus leaves the area with Mary and all that stuff, and he goes over and he thinks about it for some reason, and we'll explain what he's doing then. Because remember, he's on a spiritual level now as well. But now he's going to drop back to the human level. He goes over and he sees these little jars, right? Mm-hmm. You had jars this size in your house?
So, we went to Greece this last year. And they have water jars there sitting around here and there. And they're easily eye level. They're big jars with a narrow neck that were used for water. Mm-hmm. And they are huge.
Okay, since his height is about 5.5 feet, almost 6? Yeah. So it's about 5 foot tall. Jars, 5 foot tall.
Yeah, easily.
Okay?
They're big. You wouldn't move one.
And made of what? In this case, probably metal.
These look like clay.
Like clay. There you go. Because these were made out of stone. Okay? Or whatever. Or they were fired. So you have 6 or 7 of these. Each one holding about 30 gallons of water. So let's just take the number 7, multiply it by 30, and you have 210 gallons of water among these 7, right? Mm-hmm. And you already know what's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. They were sure doing a lot of drinking in Cana before this time if they ran out of even that much wine. Okay? But he's going to really do something now. Okay? He goes over, tells the head waiter, fill these up with water. 210 gallons of water. taken from withdrawn from a well or a spring. So they bring it in, they fill them. That's going to take a while. Okay? Because these are big stone jars. Okay? Then he does something really weird. He says, why don't you scoop out a cup of that water you just put in there, and why don't you take it over to, he tells the servant, take it over to the head waiter. Does this strike you as strange?
Well, to me, when I look at it, it's classic Jesus. He's not calling attention to himself. He's just doing something.
You're just... Oh, he is not going to call attention to himself at all. It's called a sign, which we'll get to later. So I'm going to refer that off to later. But he just did something. Something simple. Fill it with water, take a cup over, and let him have some fresh water. How is that going to solve the problem? This must have been very confusing to the servant who did it. We just put the water in, dude. What do you mean take it out? Okay? Shush, just hush. Remember, my mom said do it? Just do it. Scoops out a cup and takes it to the head waiter. Okay. Finishing that then, it says, when the steward tasted the water that had now become wine, and did not know where it came from, though the servants who had drawn the water knew, the steward called the bridegroom and said to him, everyone serves the good wine first, and then the inferior wine after the guests have become drunk, because then they don't care what they're drinking. But you have kept the good wine until now. Okay, let's stop there. What could that possibly mean? Do you have a question or thought about that? Now, this guy takes it over to the head waiter, the steward takes it, and he sips it and he goes, wow, that's good. And knowing it's custom that in the first couple of days, right after the wedding, you serve the really good wine, the best you've got, because people are not drinking to drink, they are drinking to celebrate. So you give them the good stuff. And then as time goes by, you bring out the Boone's Farm and whatever else you have, you can find. And they drink to drink. So you get the good stuff and then the bad stuff, right? Now comes this really good stuff near the end of the wedding feast, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't make sense, does it? No wonder the steward was confused. Why, you've kept the good stuff till now. No. You think I'm going to let you get off that easy? You're wrong. Here we go. What is Jesus proving? What is he saying? What is he doing? What did he do? Okay, physically, there was wine maybe in these containers to put water in and filtered it out and made it thinner wine, a little less bitter, because new wine is not tasty. They like to age it. So maybe the wine is a little better, right?
Well, clearly he went beyond that. Clearly he did it.
He pulled out a bottle of Chateau La France,
he clearly produced for the wedding something that was in excess of what was maybe expected.
Good. You're thinking very physical, which is what I want you to do. Now I want you to switch levels again. Jesus on a different level. That's the physical Cana level. He made water turn into wine. Now, what's the spiritual level? What is he doing?
Well, he's providing more than we need. He's providing in excess, above expectations.
No, this is what we needed. We needed wine.
So
you're missing it. Come on,
no,
slow down.
I'm not.
Slow down. Let's try again. Let's move up. Remember, he's talking about Israel and salvation, not good wine here. What is the good wine in our story of salvation?
In our case, it would be forgiveness.
And where do we come with all? What?
And grace.
We call it the gospel, don't we? Right? The gospel is our good news. It's God's forgiveness, His grace, His mercy, which is new. They had the law. That was old. That was stale. There now is going to be a new salvation. Do you see it now? That's the thing. He's taken it from the physical level to the spiritual level, saying, you're about to get the really good stuff at the end of Israel's career. Okay? They're about to be destroyed in a few years, 40 years. Okay? He didn't say that. But it's now, at the end of the feast, I'm going to show you the good stuff. It's called salvation through forgiveness of sins, which Israel could not offer. They could only offer the law. So instead of the law, He's giving them the Spirit. And that's going to be His ministry. And that's why the level goes from Cana to Israel, from physical to spiritual. Jesus takes them to another level. How many of them understood it?
0, probably.
Probably none. I mean, look how much trouble we had understanding that.
And we know the rest of the story.
We've heard the story. We live with the Spirit. We're drinking the good wine.
Wouldn't that kind of be summarized as faith?
Would that be summarized as faith? Yes. But even more so, it's having faith in God's promise of forgiveness and salvation.
Instead of your behaviors or walking so many miles.
Correct. Instead of my trying to earn it, having to earn it, be a certain way externally, it comes from inside of me, responding to a gift that has been given. Now that is good wine. All right. At a large gathering, there would have been a lot of washing going on. Oh, wait. Before I do it, Jesus decided to act. That's what He did, remember? He decided to act. Okay? But chose to show God's power and God's plan for salvation in such a way as to not draw too much attention to Himself. That's what you said earlier. He isn't saying, watch this, hocus pocus, abracadabra, poofa. No, He just says, take the water over there. Get it to the steward, let him taste it. And he walked away. They did it going, huh? And they tasted it and went, whoa. And that's God's message of salvation. That's what Jesus is drawing your attention to God, not Himself. Okay? So, there's some attention because He's the one who sent the water, put the water into wine. But it doesn't matter. What happened physically makes no difference, no care at all. Those people are long dead, the bodies are gone. What mattered is the spiritual. It's the salvation that we are given, the Spirit which comes to us and has guided our lives. Okay? At a large gathering, there would have been a lot of washing going on. Feet upon entry. When you come in, your sandals, you got a lot of dirt on your feet. You wash your feet. Okay? Always wash your feet. Before and after everything, you have to wash your hands before you can eat. Okay? It's just appropriate, etc. There's always washing, a lot of water being used. In the courtyard stood 6 borrowed natural stone jars. That's what it says. Each jar could hold between 20 and 30 gallons. A lot of guests had been expected and a lot of water had been necessary. It was necessary that the containers be stone, by the way, so that they would fulfill the legal criteria for purity. Stone is pure, whereas clay or anything else is impure because it's permeable. Stone is impermeable. That's clean, ritually clean water if it's in a stone container. Okay? But now, nearing the end of the feast, these jars were nearly empty. Okay? Jesus instructed the servants to refill the jars. To refill them would require a source of running water, a stream or something like that, and would require a determination to expend quite a bit of effort. You got to take people sent out with with buckets, we'll call it buckets, okay? Where they fill it, they come back, and they dump it. And they go back out and fill it and dump it. And that's 180 gallons of water. If you have a 1 gallon bucket, that's 180 trips. Okay? The servants did as they were instructed.
And by the way,
Go
that's
ahead.
1,440 pounds of water.
1,440 pounds of water. These servants work. That's a lot of water. And they've used it. And now he's telling them refill it. Okay, they did. They did what Mary told them to do. They did as they were instructed, assuming that more guests were expected. They're coming in on the next weekend, you see. It's been 5 days or so. They got 2 more days. The last of the people will be coming. So they want to make sure there's plenty of water to wash their feet, wash their hands, and drink, whatever. Okay? But then Jesus directed them to do something very strange. Draw out a cupful and take it to the head waiter, he said, and left them. They got a cup, take it over there. I'm out of here. Though it made no sense to them, they did as they were told to do. When the head waiter tasted the cupful of water, he was very glad that there was more wine available. He just assumed that this had come from a new source of wine. Someone had brought in more wine, or they found some somewhere, but they brought in more wine. And yet I was quite surprised at the fine quality of this wine. They went from Mogan David to Chateau Lafon, 1844, whatever, you know what I mean, to fine wine, okay, basically. It was better wine than he was now serving. Apparently, it was typical to serve the best wine in the first few days, when the most important guests would be there. Later, most would have drunk so much that folks would not notice a lower quality of wine. Up until now, wine had been good. Wine had been good, folks. Don't forget that. It's a party. The wine had been good. Now, I'm going to stop. What did I say on the higher level? Not the physical level, on the spiritual level. What did I just tell you? The wine had been good.
Well, if you're drawing a comparison with that in society,
Yes.
that would mean that society had been okay, but it's going to get a lot better.
Correct. But in this case, instead of just saying society, I'm going to say Jewish society, which
Sure.
is based on the Torah.
Sure.
The law has been good. It sure is better than what's happening in other countries,
Yeah.
despite the Romans. Okay? We have a better social system. But it's not great, but it's good. Okay? So up to now, the wine has been good, though it's been getting steadily worse. Remember, bureaucracies over the years get more and more strict, and they lose the quality and the flexibility of the Spirit. They become legalistic. They become poor wine. Look at our government. We were talking about the town before you all got here, and how it used to be wide open, and now it's so strict about things. And they've lost that personality that you was here when you were young of this area, when it was really nice to be here. You knew your neighbors next door, and it was open in front. Now it's tight and mean, and it's not as good. Okay? That's what it was like. No one would expect there was any better wine. They would never expected better wine. They expected the quality would go down till the end. Now here comes this cup of really nice wine. John called this a sign. You've got to be careful of the Gospel of John when he calls a thing a sign. That's a very specific term. Okay? Jesus was showing those who would look through the eyes of faith that the covenant, the old covenant, was as nearly empty as the water jars. The Torah is as empty for Israel and the world as these empty jars. It's been drained of its goodness. it's been getting worse and worse. The Torah had been excellent in its time. When it began, it was excellent. It brought freedom to a people who had been slaves. It brought them together as a culture. It made them a nation. But now it was getting stale. The Torah had been excellent in its time. It had gladdened the hearts of many noble guests, such as Moses, Joshua, David, Solomon, Elijah, and many others who came earlier to meet God. They were the first guests in this wedding Jesus is talking about on this level. Those were the early guests in this wedding feast.
I wonder how much of that has to do with what I think is even a human trait, that when you can have a lot of good stuff, but when you've got it all the time, it means nothing. You know, and that they probably still have that same thing, but it was mediocre because it was constant.
Right. We do get used to certain things. You get used to it, and what was once good is just now, we do it all the time. It's the way it always is. It's average. Like my cooking. My cooking used to be good. Now it's, oh yeah, it's what we always have. Correct.
We're used to it.
But in this case, it's not that. In this case, the Torah, as any government will over years, has gotten more and more difficult to live with. Remember that in this day, we've seen stories about the temple where they said, you have to give tithing of this, and they have all these little restrictions. You can't walk further than that. You don't eat this food, you can't do that. And it's just gotten so legal that it's not, I mean, yeah, we do have a better society than around us, because they were nasty. Okay? They were even worse than it was in Israel.
Still, if we look within scriptures, everything after King Solomon, and in fact during King Solomon's reign, things went downhill.
Yes.
And you had a few good kings, but for the most part within scripture, most of the kings following Solomon were evil kings.
They tended to be more like the regular kings around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then Rome came in and they cleaned that up supposedly, and probably in the view of the Romans.
Either way, yeah.
But now you're limited to Roman law, which was a guy with a sword, and if you didn't do what he said, he stuck you with the sword.
Well, that was two parts. Yes, you have the physical, the Roman thing, but you also have the Torah, the synagogue, the temple.
Mm-hmm.
So you have both of them telling you what to do.
Mm-hmm. In conflict, probably.
Yeah, in basic conflict. So life is worse than it was back then when we first had the Torah, when that was all we had. Okay, so it's actually been getting worse, but it was great at the beginning. Great at the beginning.
We're still talking about 1,000 years of degradation.
Oh yeah, it's 1,000 years. Remember, Jesus has gone up to the spiritual level here, not just the physical level. He's in the spiritual level. God, through Israel, had brought justice into an unjust world. A world where might makes right. And that is not a just world. Okay? But Israel was now serving poor justice to its own people. It was relying only on the law, and now had a bad reputation. The wine had been getting worse. Okay? God would now expect Israel to let love be a balance for the law and thus provide true justice. Going to be in a spirit now where you can love and not just judge. That's what we got. We got the gospel. Okay? They were living under the Torah. So he's promising them that there's something new coming. Okay? A new wine. We've been drinking it the whole time, all our lives. We've been blessed by the Holy Spirit. Now, through Jesus, God was offering something better. The gospel of God's mercy and forgiveness. This is going to be Jesus' message. That gospel will truly let justice flow down like water and will gladden the hearts of the nations. is far better than what the law of Moses had become. Not what it was originally, but what it had become under the temple cult, under all the Sadducees, Pharisees, histories, traditions, all of that stuff that was added to what Moses had, has made life almost impossible for some people. Certainly worse. But now we're going to be under the gospel. This is the good news that Jesus was bringing. This is the better wine that God will now serve to his guests. That's us. This was proof for Philip and Nathanael, whose faith was new. Quote, "See, Nathanael, something good has come out of Nazareth." Remember when he first heard it? If what could good come out of it? Well, here's their answer. The gospel, the Spirit of God is going to come out, and it's going to refresh us, and it's going to bring us salvation. Nothing wrong with the Torah when it was started, but it's become bureaucratized. Not that that's a word. Okay? Any questions, thoughts, or comments? All right, next week we're going to meet Nicodemus when he comes to visit Jesus.